true subject. But there are links, and I can give you them at the end. You can come to me anytime, and you can look for yourselves, and then in your own time you can explore the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of teachings from Jesus and Mary about what I've been told to me about today. So my prayers these days are about feeling this love come in. And if, like I said to you earlier, if none of you have experienced this before, it's so hard to explain what it feels like. All I can say is just super, super, super overwhelming. And when I used to hear about this, I used to be like, yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does feel nice. Yeah, I'm sure it does change my life. But will it really? You know? And I think that probably went on for about a year or 2 years of just experimenting with prayer, and nothing happened at all. Oh yeah, on my flyer I talked about prayer, didn't I? Cool. I'm going to go on to this subject. So, like, what's a real prayer? What's a real prayer? And what's kind of like a fake prayer? So, real prayers, as always, are truthful and sincere. And if you're praying and then nothing's happening at all in your life, it's because you're not being sincere. You actually don't want to change. You're telling yourself, I want to change this, I want to do that. But if nothing's happening, clearly from your experiment, as being a little scientist, you can say, my life hasn't changed, so it means I don't want to change. And it's quite humbling when you get to that place. Because you have to go like, oh shit. I actually don't want to change. But the beautiful thing is, once you admit that to yourself, you don't want to change, God and your guides are then able to work with you. Because for the first time you're being honest. And until you become honest, you can't change. And you'll realise if you do start to experiment with prayer, in the beginning it'll be a little bit difficult, but you can ask for, you can ask for guidance from God, you can ask about your guides, and if situations happen in your life, you can experiment, you can pray and see if anything changes or if anything happens. And just become like a little scientist and just see if anything happens. So I've just been doing that now for the last 5 years. To the point now where it's changed my life so much that I just wanted to share it with everybody else. And when I first saw AJ, Jesus, when I was in Greece, and I saw what he was doing, I was like, I so want to do what he's doing. This is just changing my world in ways that I can't even explain at the moment. And I told him, and that was 5 years ago, and he kind of like laughed as if to say, yep, I've definitely got a few things to go through before you can start presenting. And he was right, definitely. And 5 years later, I'm standing here today, so I'm dead chuffed that I've come this far and been able to share it. So what I want to do now is just want to open up any questions and see if anyone's got any thoughts or feelings about what I've said, and we can just talk about it, really. Yeah.
So when you pray on a particular thing, so when you're talking about with working with the psoriasis, what does that look like? Not tangibly, but like in practice,
yeah.
What can we do? How can we do that? How can we create a strength of prayer that's not just the pleading, but it's actually inviting change?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, like I said before, you have to want to be sincere. I can't stress enough, you have to be sincere. Because, if love is perfect, and then we are being imperfect and insincere with our desire, how are you ever going to get a true answer from God? So for me, God created the world perfect. There's no grey area. It's just like, and that's the way I've been feeling. Like God only deals with me when I'm being truthful, because God is always truthful. And the only reason why I wouldn't be truthful is because I've got some kind of fear inside me, or something that I don't want to admit. So, first thing with prayer at a practical level is have a desire to be truthful. And when I say prayer, it doesn't have to be like this, church thing or anything like that. It's just, I was just talking like this. I was like, God, if you're real, just show me. Like, that guy was Jesus. I don't really believe him, and I kind of believe him, but if he is, and I was just having this in my own voice, not in a special voice. I wasn't channeling, you know, anything like that. I didn't have to think that I'd gone to a special school or church. It was literally like the first time. I was just on my hands and knees, and just shouting out loud. And all I was doing, I was just being honest. And then because I was honest and had a strong desire that I wanted to change this, then God was able to interact with me. With the thing that's right, again, I was standing there. I was in the mirror for about 5 minutes. I was just looking and I was praying and praying. Nothing was happening. Nothing was happening. And I was like, God, what is it I don't want to feel? And as soon as I said, what is it I don't want to feel? God was then able to respond. He was like, dude, you don't want to feel this. It was, you don't want to feel you're ugly. And as soon as I felt that, then I felt the emotion and everything came up. So if I'm ever praying and I don't feel something, my next prayer is, why don't I want it to change? Or why don't I want to feel a certain thing? And then it gives a little bit more, it gives God something to play with. Because it's because of the law of free will. So God doesn't want you to change because God wants you to change. God wants you to change and wants you to have a desire to become more loving. And it will never be forced upon you, ever, ever, ever. So if you don't decide you want to change, you'll never change. As soon as you do, God's there in an instant. And what I realised is, most of the time when I'm about to pray, I feel God's love before I've even said the prayer. So it kind of like already knew that I was going to pray that prayer. And started to act. But only when I'm sincere. When I'm not sincere, I'm just like there chatting to myself and nothing happens. But then God will use different stuff in my environment to try and show me why I don't want to look at myself. So, yeah. Any more questions? Yeah.
Hang on a second. Who's speaking? I'll come back to you.
When you talk about God,
Yeah.
are you kind of referring to it in a religious sense or a spiritual sense or a conscious sense?
Sure. Cool. Did everyone hear that? The question was, when I talk about God, what does it mean? Is it in a spiritual sense, a religious sense, an energy sense? So, when I talk about God, it is literally the feeling that God is my parent, so my mother and father. And it's a separate entity. So, as I can feel you, you're sitting there, and I'm still in here. I can see you, I can feel you. If we were to, talk more and more, I'd learn more and more about you. I'd understand more and more about you. That's what my feeling is with God. So, and I'm still in a discovery process, so I don't know the whole picture. Jesus can tell you a whole lot more. I'm just in my beginning stages, but the way it feels to me at the moment is God is a soul, I'm a soul, and I can have a relationship with my feelings with God. And it's love-based, all love-based. So anything I want to know and learn about love, I can pray to the being that created me, which is absolutely perfect in all love. So when things are going wrong in my life, I can ask God. I don't go to my parents who probably created those things. I can go to God who's perfect. And through those feelings, when I was grieving about myself, God was teaching me, Perry, you think ugly, but you're not. And I started to build that connection. But it's a little bit hard to difficult. So, for example, you could go home later and say, okay, God, this guy Perry's talking about you. No, give it a try. And does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Yeah. So it's for me, it's a separate entity. It's not an energy. It's not a universal thing. It's not a oneness thing. And I definitely don't believe that I am God. What's been happening is, as I've been praying, I can start to feel God's love enter me, and my soul starts to become God-like, because I'm starting to have the qualities in my soul which are from God. And then what happens is, I go about my life doing things in a godly way, which then I start to see the consequences of that. So I'm not God, but through receiving God's love, I can become like God in the sense of I won't be making any mistakes. Everything I do, everything I say, all my actions will be loving.
I just want to confirm what you were saying about truth. I'm an equine facilitated psychotherapist, which basically means that I'm going to provide counselling through the use of horses. And basically, in short, how that works is that they are incredibly authentic animals, and the only way they can communicate is through the limbic part system in the brain, which is the oldest part that we all have, and we all used to communicate that way through our bodies and using our bodies as a sensing tool. So to be around the horses, I noticed, sort of from a therapist point of view, if somebody really wants change, they have to be honest and they have to be truthful. And what happens if they're not, more often than not, is the horses reject them. And they end up all being in their head and unable to communicate. And that goes back to what you were saying about the life lessons and wanting change, and the signs getting bigger and bigger. And I think it's important to recognise, where you come from, or where we all come from. We don't just suddenly wake up, well, perhaps we do sometimes, and want change.
Yep.
I know my experience, similar to yours, is that I've had to sort of recognise the huge signs, rather than it being a minute sign. And as you become more aware, and you become more authentic, you're able to recognise the smaller signs, like you were saying. So I just wanted to affirm, it was very interesting to hear you speak today, so thank you. And it ties in very much with the work that I do. And it's so nice, the animals I work with, that they all stand in their truth 100%. And isn't it interesting? And wouldn't it be lovely if we could all have the ability to do that naturally? So,
Yes, it's a good point you've raised, because animals especially, and children, for parents out there, respond so perfect to our emotions and what we're feeling. So for example, like with the horses, if you're not being truthful, you're not being loving, the animal can sense that, and it might kick you. And you're like, oh, why has it kicked me? Or if you're near a child and just start screaming for no apparent reason, you can go, oh, what's going on in me that I'm projecting? And then you can start to feel through that. I used to be in a relationship, just probably a minute to end on this, and she had a little boy, and when he would hit his mum, we would, instead of telling him off, like I got done, and slap him, oh, you can't do that, we'd teach him through the lessons of love. So what we'd do is we'd hold him, we'd embrace the child, and just hold him, and he would go nuts. He would kick and scream, and he would just, get off me, get off me, get off me. We'd just hold him and hold him and hold him, and he would be in a rage. So by holding him, we showed him that it's not okay to hit people. We did say it's okay to feel through your anger. We didn't say stop crying, stop showing your anger, so we just let him express himself as a little individual. So there he is in his 10-1, raging. This went on for about half an hour, so it kind of takes some time. But we didn't suppress the child. As soon as you suppress the child, you've got to remember that's been suppressed right forever until they decide to release it again. So he's kicking away, screaming. Obviously the mother's going through her own emotions about, oh, this is child abuse or what, I'm not quite sure. It's difficult being a parent and having what's loving and what's not loving. So anyway, went through the whole process, kicking and screaming. After about 20 minutes, he just started to sob and cry and cry and cry. He was just in his mum's arms. We were sending him love the whole time. He was crying and crying and crying and crying until he was no longer kicking and screaming. And then he got up, jumped off the knee, went outside, he came back and gave his mum on a strawberry.
Oh.
And half an hour before, he was punching her violently with a rage. So it's like, okay, what's going on in the mum here, the child? What is the mum suppressing? That the child is expressing towards the mum. So she's obviously, could be many different reasons, but there's emotion in her which is allowing a male to abuse her. Because the kid's just expressing it. And then once we let the child go through all the emotions, you know, in grief, whatever he was feeling, I don't know what it was, he then was able to be much more loving and came back and offered his mum a gift. So, yeah, it's really, really interesting. It's got tons and tons of stories and examples of ways that I could, you know, highlight to you these things going on. But I know I haven't got time today, and it's such a big. Have I got a point to finish up? 5 minutes? Okay, cool. Maybe then another question. Yeah.
I think it was really interesting when you said about coffee. Me, sorry, it's my so for me, I find with sort of coffee, sugar, caffeine, cigarettes, and I always reach for those things when I'm feeling a little bit. I don't know what it is, just something in my stomach, and I'll sort of mask it. And I've like, similar to you, tried to interrogate what that is, and I haven't mastered it yet. But I just thought that I thought that was really interesting, and sort of if you've got any advice for how you like sort of ask the question or get to the base of why you're doing these things you know you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So what's happening with yourself is an addiction that you've got going on. So the emotion comes up, I'll go to the thing that's going to make me feel okay again. So I was going to the coffee, I used to go to the drugs, I used to go to the alcohol, I used to go to porn, whatever. And over the years, I don't engage in any of those things anymore. And I don't even need to try anymore. So I don't say to myself an affirmation, don't watch porn, don't watch porn, don't watch porn. I just don't. I don't sing, don't go for a beer, I don't walk past the pub going, oh no. In the beginning that I did, is because I didn't have the love in my, I didn't have a change of heart. So all those things were addictions. So first off, what you need to do is you need to challenge them first intellectually. So, like, stop doing the addiction. So, you want to go for the cigarette, or you want to go for the coffee or the alcohol. If you're starting to come to this feeling, it's like, this feels a bit wrong now. Like, stop doing it. And then what will happen is, you'll start to have a feeling about that. And then in that moment, you can pray and say, you know, God, what's going on? Why did I want to go for that? What's happening with me? And then you can just experiment by not going for it and then praying and then seeing what feelings come up. And it might be, you know, it'll be fear of something. And you'll be scared of something. You know, I was scared of the women. You'll be scared of something. So you go for the thing, your fear will go down, and then you won't have to feel the grief of what you really should be feeling. So when I said about the true feeling is like way down below. But then you've got your fear about feeling that. You know, so you go for the addictions, and if we're not careful, we're just in this addictive cycle, and that's addictions is not love, and then we wonder why we don't feel love. So that's the key, is to try and break the addictions, and there can be emotional addictions too, not just physical stuff. So is that helpful at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. It will freak you out, and it might take you about 100
really
times.
interesting because you do reach for those things in those moments that really resonate with that.
Cool. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thanks, that was really useful. Just about a book which is evidence-based around mindfulness and different mindfulness practices. Pretty much everything you described in the book about today ties into those practices which are scientifically evidence great feeling to give them the power to go through these mindfulness processes that you have described.
The question was, do we need God? And my experiment so far is no, that you can develop, stop your addictions, you know, become super proactive, be a better person, more loving, more giving, more thankful. You can do all those things without God and never even pray. It just takes such a long time. Like repetition, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error. And it was, what was the name of that book again, you said?
I think The Science of Mindfulness.
Okay, so Science of the Mind. So I'm talking
The Science of Mindfulness.
Mindfulness. Science of mindfulness. So that, for me, would be the big distinction. So the word mindfulness versus your soul. And what happens is when you start to involve God, because God is the soul, you have these like dramatic changes, instant changes. It doesn't take a long time. So I've changed quite a lot in the last 5 years when I've received God's love, which might not, it's hard to explain, but once you feel it, like when I cleared up a lot of my injuries about myself and loving myself, I just stopped watching porn, for example. And I never thought I would give that up, and I loved it. And I just did, and now I'm like, oh, I've got this compassion for women, like, oh, you poor women, like, that's like horrible. And then all these other, I'm going, they're just abused and this, and I never used to think that. I used to look, so I had a change of heart. So as I start to feel God's love about things, the changes can happen instantly. Whereas when I was doing stuff with the mind, it just takes longer. So you can't become a better person, so to speak, by just using your mind. But then what happens, which is a whole other talk, is what happens when you die and you're in the spirit world, which is another massive subject. I don't have that time today. Yeah. So the spirits in the spirit world also using their mind, and there'll be other spirits which are brighter because they're engaging their souls and they've got God's love. And you then go, oh, maybe I want to be like them. What are they doing differently? And they're progressing in a different way, much more rapid. So, yeah. So even though it's very similar to the book that I've been saying, you suggested that, you know, I've got this little thing on the side about the God. What's that difference? That is the difference. Is once you build that relationship with God, it has like a different feeling about it. Like the substance of it is really, really different. And it is hard for me to put into words. It is something that you will have to experiment yourself. But I feel it to be true. You know, that's all I can suggest, really. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. And unfortunately, that's time out. So I didn't get to use my beautiful whiteboard. I bought that this morning.